Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Bend Don't Break, Key Findings from the 2024 Storefront Security and Emergency Response Report. First impressions are always important, and for the brick and mortar retailer, the storefront provides a first impression of the business. But whether the business has just a few doors and windows or a huge glass storefront, these are always among the property's most susceptible points. Since 2020, retail storefronts have become increasingly vulnerable to riots, looting, and smash and grab crimes. To find out what retailers are doing to protect their storefronts, Loss Prevention Magazine and our sponsor today, NGS, conducted the 2024 Storefront Security and Emergency Response Survey. Hundreds of retail loss prevention professionals responded to our survey today, and the results are in. My name is Jack Britton. I'm your host today, and with us today is Angie Drewley and Brianna Rivera from NGS. Today, we're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about the key findings and takeaways from the reports. We're going to gain some insights into the latest storefront security technologies and tactics. We're going to take action to strengthen your storefronts against potential risks. And we're also going to learn about the latest and greatest glazing security solutions on the market today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angie Drewley with NGS. Angie, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Jack, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Really excited to dive into this report. I know when we first received it, I was surprised by some of the findings, and I'm curious to see what everyone here thinks as well. So as Jack said, my name is Angie Drewley. I am the VP of Retail for NGS Films and Graphics. For any of you who may not be familiar with NGS, we are 3M's largest national dealer, completing more than 11,000 projects per year in the energy, security, and branding space. NGS has been helping retail loss prevention professionals protect their people and property for nearly 15 years. Today, I'm joined by Brianna Rivera, one of my colleagues here at NGS. Brianna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. As Angie said, I'm Brianna. I am a project manager in our security department at NGS, and I have been here for almost 3 years next month, and it has been a great time just learning and diving in, and I'm very interested to discuss what we have already gotten to look at as the results of this survey. So very excited to be a part, excited to talk through some of this stuff with you guys.
Thank you, Brianna. And our intention is that this be conversational today. Obviously, this survey went out to a number of retail professionals, retail loss prevention professionals. Some of you may have already responded. Some of you may, a few months down the road, have a different response than the way you responded originally. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We would love your feedback. So first up, Jack's going to take us through the background of this survey.
Okay, to start with, this is actually our second time through this particular survey. We first conducted the survey in 2022, and then again here in the spring of this year. Responses to the survey came from a broad range of loss prevention executives and field folks. We had folks from the corporate level leadership. About 36% or so are the decision makers that responded to the survey. In addition, we had a lot of the field folks out there that chimed in and gave their opinions on these particular subjects. Most of the respondents were here from the United States, okay? And the responses came from a wide range of different types of retailers that also represented a lot of different numbers of stores, whether the retailer had as many as 50 stores or well over 1,000 and even 6, 7, 8, 9,000 stores that the retail category represented.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad that we had such a variety of responses from, different people at different levels, people in different company structures. I think it helps us to better understand what's happening overall in the industry.
And again, just as we're getting started here, keep in mind, we do want this to be conversational, as Angie mentioned earlier. If you have any suggestions, questions, comments, whatever it might be, please jump in. That's what this is for.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the key findings that we are going to review today are, number one, break-ins have become more widespread, but conversely, break-ins have become less of a concern. This was one of the more surprising results of this survey that I found, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. Number three, storefront security has been deprioritized. Very interested to hear feedback on if people agree with that one. Confidence in law enforcement and company response has decreased, and ORC is more concerning than the upcoming presidential election. So Brianna, why don't we talk a little bit about the findings on break-ins becoming more widespread?
Yeah, so breaking down all of those key findings. That first one, break-ins have become more widespread. So the survey showed that 86% of the survey respondents indicated that they experience break-ins and or break-in attempts in their area of responsibility every year. That is up 3 percentage points from the last time we did this survey.
Yeah, I think that was, I guess, not surprising that it's becoming an increasing problem. However, I think the last time we did this survey was on the heels of 2020 and a lot of civil unrest. And so when we originally put this out, I expected it to be relatively close to the same. So I guess I personally was a little bit surprised that we had an increase. Jack, what are your thoughts from working so closely with retail loss prevention professionals?
I guess I'm not surprised. We worked the last time we did this, we were just on the heels of the whole COVID debacle that we went through. And I can tell you that I think that if you really look at especially the concerns that we have around organized retail crime and those types of problems, I'm not surprised it went up a little bit. Let's say that 86% is still pretty high.
Yeah, it is, and I think that we're overall we're not surprised knowing that there are break-ins are a problem, right? Everybody's known that for a really long time. I think what is a little incongruent there is seeing that break-ins have increased, but the concern over break-ins has decreased. So 63% of our survey respondents agree that break-in attempts remain a growing concern in their area of responsibility. So this is down 24 percentage points since our 2022 survey. And so, whenever we had our pre-meeting, we were discussing some of the reasons that this might happen. Obviously, we've seen an increase in concern over the ORC. That's a huge topic in retail. And then, my thought on that was have retail loss prevention teams just grown desensitized? Or is there a feeling of kind of like, well, there's not a whole lot that we can do about it?
I would agree with that, Angie. I do think that, as these types of things continuously go on, we are somewhat desensitized to the types of problems that we have out there. And that should be a concern for every loss prevention team out there, that we don't become too desensitized to these types of things, because that's when we have more problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Then Jack, you want to walk us through this storefront security?
Okay. 47% of survey respondents indicated that loss prevention proactivity assesses the risk of break-ins. This is actually down 30% from the 2022 survey. 20% of survey respondents indicated a level of support within the organization to implement measures to enhance storefront security. Okay, 53% indicated moderate support, and 27% indicated that there's limited or no support.
Yeah, and so what we're seeing here is we're seeing that storefront security has been deprioritized, where I think you know, back when we were in 2020, 2021, and even 2022, we were seeing a lot of reactive responses to things that were happening, right? We were trying to fill a gap in the aftermath of events that were happening. For a while, I will say that a lot of our partners were taking a more proactive approach. It kind of, I think, opened people's eyes to what could happen. And I know there were a lot of challenges around planning, okay, where do we do this? When do we do this? When do we take action? So it was surprising to me to see that there's an overall sense that storefront security as a whole has become deprioritized. And I wonder if, again, if we're just in kind of a lull of what we saw happening several years ago, and when the next big thing happens, if we'll be back in a reactive position again.
I'll tell you what was something else that I thought of here when we were looking through this, Angie, is the idea, has it really been deprioritized? Or is it that, you know, because of some of the other things that are happening out there today, those things have taken on a greater priority? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would question whether or not it is that they're being deprioritized as much as we just have so many different things going on today that it tends to drop our thoughts and our actions when it comes to these types of things.
Sure. There's only so much time. There's only so much money, you know,
Exactly.
and so you kind of have to pick the top priority. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Something that you had mentioned, Jack, when we were going through this, that I think is good to point out is that typically people are looking for stronger security solutions after 5 or 6 break-ins. And my
Right.
immediate thought is after 2 or 3, right? But we're going over just the 2 or 3. It's really waiting until the last possible minute to get to that point. And I find that to be pretty interesting. You know, the stuff inside of our stores is valuable. And so I'm wondering, what are those challenges that are preventing us from, you know, stopping it a little bit earlier?
Yeah.
I'm sure that a biggest part of that is cost,
Right.
and you know what it takes to actually make that happen and get that going. And you know, when you look at some of the reasons that the folks have given us here, financial limitations was one of the top things. Right now, it's more about saving the money on hand than the long-term goals down the road. The cost is prohibitive. Finances limit our options. And if you look at the different options that people gave for this, that seems to be the biggest priority right now with everything else that we're spending money on. There is that tendency to look at incidents that have happened 2, 3, 4, 5 times before we make that commitment to do this in our stores.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be the big indicator there, Jack. And I'm curious, with our partners that are online here, is this what you're seeing as well? So I'd love to hear some feedback on, you know, what is your experience? Would you say that you have financial limitations, that this really has become less of a priority, or is that not your experience? And then
Please
Brianna,
jump in, everyone. That's what the chat's for. We'd love to hear your feedback.
why don't you go ahead and walk us through our key point number 4?
Yeah, so confidence in law enforcement and the company's emergency response has decreased. 21% of survey respondents agree that the first responders and or law enforcement typically arrive quickly enough to the scene to reduce loss. So that's down 21% from the last time we did this survey. 56% of the survey respondents indicated that when faced with a potential threat, that they are highly confident in the company's chosen emergency response. That's down 23%.
Yeah, and I don't think that's probably very surprising either, at least on the law enforcement end. I think we're all aware of the challenges that our law enforcement teams face, you know, that they're spread thin as well, and having exactly what we were just talking about on the loss prevention side, having to decide what's the priority and what's not. I think that's not surprising to see that trend downwards.
It looks like our chat might be disabled. Is there a way to get that up and running?
It's showing me that it's up and running, so if not, we can always use the Q&A. Okay.
Great, thanks, Jack. And then I think that looking at, okay, how confident are people in their own companies' planned emergency responses? You know, seeing that drop by 23 points is really significant. And I'm curious if that is the result of more awareness of what could be or what might be needed, or if it's a result of like programs falling off that maybe were in place earlier, like in the 2020, 2021 era. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Jack? What do you think could be causing that to fall off?
I think there could be a lot of things. Again, it is the response time has to do with priorities and the other things that happen there. I also think part of that and part of the ways that people respond might also have to do with how quickly people are getting in and out of the stores in those incidents. If something's pre-planned, okay, and you realize that there very well could be a law enforcement response, part of it might be simply that they're in and out of there as quickly as they can. They grab what they can and get out. So.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of in the responses and the quotes from the responses. We're seeing, you know, that same thing. Law enforcement is overstaffed. You know, the alarm calls are low priority. Interestingly enough, I was on a webinar last week where one of our retail partners was saying that they have found that video verification can help with response time, that if they have verified video, that there is somebody in the space, or they're able to verify that by video, that they will actually get a faster response time from the police. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but that was one of the recommendations that came out of a webinar we were on last week.
Again, we seem to be having some problems with the chat, so please use the Q&A.
Okay.
It'll get it to us just as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for confirming that. And then last but not least, ORC is more concerning than the upcoming presidential election. You want to talk us through this one, Jack?
Yes. When it comes to the upcoming presidential election, 19% of survey respondents indicated that 2024 presidential election and the potential for civil unrest have had a high level of impact on their LP plans and strategy. Now, I will comment that when the survey took place, it was back in the spring, so I'm sure that that wasn't the top priority at the time, which might also have some impact on the way people responded. Okay, 81% of survey respondents indicated that the primary reason or motivation for break-ins and break-in attempts is due to organized retail crime.
Yeah, and I think if anyone who's been in this loss prevention space for any number of years, organized retail crime continues to be a growing concern amongst retailers. And so what I'm seeing here from this response is that the overall feeling is that organized retail crime is the problem, and storefront break-ins and all of that is a secondary problem as a result of the organized crime issue. And I'm curious again, you know, if this is the same experience that our attendees have. And one of the things that we talked about on our call earlier, Jack, was that it's shifted to, you know, we've had a shift where it used to be break-ins were overnight. So we had to really think about like overnight break-ins and crime overnight, where now we're experiencing break-ins during the day. So we've got people coming into the store, taking things. It's no longer like just petty theft. We've got people coming in, smashing cases, taking things out in the middle of the day. So it's a new challenge, right? That people are coming in during store hours and open stores and looting and robbing.
That's correct. And we've also seen it in, for example, in California, there was a whole series of break-ins in cannabis stores
Yeah.
where they were breaking into those types of stores and right in the middle of the day. And you know, I think that you do have situations here where that type of thief that's involved in ORC has become a lot more brazen. You
Oh,
know,
yes.
there's just simply not as much concern with the potential consequences and what could happen. Okay, largely because of things like response time and also pre-planning, the things that we've talked about. I do think that especially when you have that element, it's not just a bunch of kids on a corner that, you know, find a hammer and decide to go in and break into a store. You know,
Sure.
it's much more planned than that, and they get in and out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. One of the partners that we work with, she used to actually be part of the FBI and had a background in looking at organized retail crime. And she was saying, you know, back 25 years ago, they used to say, well, you know, thieves are dumb. They're dumb. You know, we all think they're dumb. And she said that's just not the case anymore. That's not what we're looking at anymore. It's very sophisticated. They're very smart. They plan it out and execute in a different way than we've ever seen.
Well, there's a lot of money in it as well, Angie. When you look at this, I just told you about the cannabis stores. Well, there was just this case in California that just took place, $1.7 million
Wow.
in cannabis that was taken from the stores. And you know, you look at the size of some of the organized retail crime incidents that have happened across the country. There's been stores that have broken into where they've stolen firearms. You know, there's all different types of things that folks are stealing, and they're making a fortune off of retail merchandise. And
Yeah.
so there's just, I think that they look at that opportunity to turn our products into cash. And it's obviously having a great impact on these types of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think that there's a growing understanding of the problem there being, you know, that it's not just petty theft. It's not just not a big deal that things are being stolen, because that money is used then for, you know, drug rings and human trafficking and some of the things that we're working really hard to prevent and stop. And that's all connected. It's really eye-opening when you sit and look at it. And with
Absolutely.
regard to the upcoming election, here were a couple of quotes that we got. We anticipate there will be increased protests and or unrest as the tension heightens. Close proximity to hotspots for these types of activities is the primary concern. I think that we've got a good idea of where these things might happen now, and perhaps people with stores in those areas are being a little bit more proactive. Another quote, we are in the Midwest where unrest is unlike that of the DC area where I came from. We used to have to board up all of our windows for just about all major demonstrations. Yeah, and this is something that we saw, you know, a lot in 2020 and 2021. We had one of our retail partners share with us that their board up budget for the year for board up and I think emergency glass replacement was $3.4 million. So it's a very, very costly problem to try to solve. So NGS, as I mentioned, we've been working with retail partners to enhance their storefront security for a long time. Some of the challenges that we see are to increase security while maintaining visibility. So there are a lot of stakeholders when it comes to storefront security. You have loss prevention, who is usually, you know, game for whatever it takes to protect the store, but you have to balance that with your construction team. You have to balance that with your facilities team, and then with your design team. And the biggest thing that we hear is, you know, we don't want to change the look of the glass. We don't want to prevent visibility into the store. So that's one of the challenges that we face all the time with our partners. One of the other quotes we got was, after our last break-in at one of our stores, we secured the area with concrete barriers to limit access to the display windows again. So this is a great example of what we see, is that people are having to put things that are not necessarily aesthetic aesthetically pleasing into place in an attempt to protect their stores. So the most expensive costs of break-in are, number one, the loss of inventory, and number two, emergency glass repair. I'm sure anybody who has had to deal with that knows it's very costly, and it's still taking quite a long time to get that replacement glass. So storefront security is still most needed during the after hours. So 78% of our survey participants indicated that break-ins and break-in attempts occur between midnight and 6 a.m. So even though we are seeing these daytime break-ins, obviously the vast majority of break-ins are still happening in that overnight hour. So here at NGS, we take a tiered approach to glazing security, storefront security. We understand that not every threat is the same and not every budget is the same. So some people are a little bit more budget conscious. Some people don't have as high of a threat, as maybe some others. And so we provide a number of different options. And just to give you a little bit of education around security film, our tier 1 is a traditional 8mm film interior applied with a wet glaze attachment. And that attachment system is incredibly important for security film. So security film was actually developed as a bomb blast mitigation product. So it's meant to hold the glass in place in case of a bomb blast so that all of that debris doesn't go flying and injuring people. Somewhere along the way, someone figured out if we anchor this film to the window frame, we can help to delay people from getting in. So that's what this tier 1 is. It is a single layer security film applied to the interior of the glass with that wet glaze attachment system. Tier 2 is also that interior 8mm, but then we further harden the glass by putting an exterior 7mm on the outside of the window. That's going to give you about a 2-time performance increase over that tier 1. So we do a lot of work with schools, as you can imagine, looking at active shooter scenarios and helping to slow people down from getting into the building. So let me be very, very clear before we watch this video. There is no such thing as ballistic or bulletproof or bullet resistant window film. It is meant to slow people down. It is a delayed product meant to slow people down from getting in through the glass. However, what we see in a lot of these active shooter scenarios are people, the doors are locked. So what they're going to do is they're going to shoot out the glass window and be able to gain entrance into the school. So the film is there to help slow them down, to help prevent them from being able to shoot that glass out. And you can see here in this active shooter demo, the bullet will pass through the glass. It's always going to pass through the glass. There are some instances, some combinations of film that if you're putting it like on a 3/8" or 1/2" thick annealed glass, you might get some results in helping to stop that bullet. However, that's more a result of the glass type that's being used. Per code, most glass is 1/4" tempered glass. And so when you're looking at what's really out there, what's in the environment that we live in, you're going to be up against that 1/4" tempered glass where you don't want to rely on the window film as a bullet resistant or bulletproof option. But you can see here, they weren't able to get through that by just shooting out the glass. So this is a tier 2 where we have that double layer of glass. See if I can get my advance here. So tier 3, this is what I'm really, really excited to tell you about today. So tier 3 is a brand new technology from 3M called S2400. This is actually the first innovation in window security film in nearly 30 years. So for a really long time, we've had these options of, okay, we've got the legacy polyester-based security film that we just looked at, or we have more aggressive solutions like roll down gates or shutters or riot glass. And in between these options, there's a very large gap in pricing and performance. This film was developed specifically to fill that gap. So the difference in this film is that it is a polyurethane-based film. So all of our standard traditional films are polyester-based. This is a polyurethane-based film. What that means is that it's going to stretch. So as it's impacted, it's going to stretch instead of tearing. And we're going to watch a little bit of a demonstration video that is really relevant for a retail break-in type scenario. It's a long video, so we won't watch the whole thing, but you can see here, this is a single layer application of the S2400. It is extremely difficult to get through. So this is going to give you a 6 to 8 time performance increase over that tier 1, that single layer 8mm film. And you can see, actually, the one he's doing now, this is the 8mm film. So that's what you're seeing first. So this is that single layer 8mm film that we talked about at the beginning. And then he's going to move over momentarily. You can see he gets through that pretty quickly. So it's significantly more difficult to get through this film. So as I said, it's a 6 to 8 time performance increase over that single layer film. So this is going to buy you time for either a police response, for if we're in a scenario where you have employees or you have customers in your space, it's going to buy people time to shelter in place. And you can see the difficulty that he's having getting through this. We felt really bad for him by the end of this demonstration. He was pretty worn out.
Yeah, a lot of anger there, though.
Yeah. And we consider breach whenever you can get full body passage. So you can see in the window to the left that somebody could obviously get through that hole. It's taking him significantly more time to do that here with this product. And I actually have right here, I have pieces of the product itself. So this is I love doing this demonstration because I think it's so good for people to see it in real time. Here we have a traditional 8mm polyester film. So if you rip this film, you could go right through it. So this is still, a good product for delay, but it's not the best product for delay any longer. Then you have the S2400. So this is a 24mm thick film. And you can see you just can't get through it. It's a very, very impressive product. And if there's anybody on today that would be interested in receiving samples of this so that you can try this for yourself and see that I'm not just a terribly weak person, we would be happy to send some to you.
Angie, can you tell us a little bit about visually the way the product looks when it's
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that up. Whenever we first started testing this product, obviously we do a lot of work for commercial and government customers, but my specialty has always been retail. So as soon as I heard 24mm film, I was like, oh, how is this going to do for retail? My biggest concern being optical clarity, because that is extremely important in the retail sector. And so it is optically clear. We had tested this with some of our pickiest customers. We got them on board before this was even out to market and said, hey, can we come put it up at one of your spaces, test it there? Can your design team come out, your construction team come out, take a look at it and give us some feedback? And all the feedback that we have received has been very positive. So it does not change the look of your glass.
Has there ever been problems with, sometimes I can tell you some products in the past, there might have been a problem with bubbling and that type of thing when the products were applied?
No. So this is actually another really good point about this product is that it cures 80 times faster than legacy window film. So, but all of these products are a wet applied product, meaning that we're going to spray the glass, we're going to apply the film so that it adheres to the glass correctly. Generally speaking, for a security film, a traditional security film, you're going to need about 60 days for that to cure. So for all of the bubbles to go away, everything to completely disappear out of that film, this will actually cure 80% faster. It will be cured 80% within, I believe, 48 hours of the application. So it's better for that as well. Thanks, Jack. And then our tier 4 is our access denial product. So this product is meant to absolutely keep people out of the store. It is a retrofitted glazing product, meaning that we are going to install it over your existing storefront system. You can see here, this is a great indicator of what this will look like on your store. This is meant to replicate your storefront framing system. And then this is the Riot glass framing right here. It sits right there within your storefront system. And this gap here between the panel and the glass is intentional. A lot of times what we'll see is this actually helps to prevent glass breakage as well. So as long as you don't have like these giant windows where we've got some bowing in the panel, they won't be able to tap that glass behind. And so that will help mitigate some of the repair costs for the glass and all of that. The good news is, even if it does break the glass, you don't have emergency glass repair. This is a set it and forget it solution. So you could just leave that there. It's kind of like an invisible barricade that sits in front of your glass and protects your store. The other nice thing about this is there's no maintenance required and there's no employee engagement. We've heard from various customers that they've invested in gates or shutters. You know, the employees will roll them down at the end of the day and forget to lock them. They'll get a break-in. Somebody will just roll it right up and walk into the store. So there's nothing required from employees to lock this into place or to do anything for this to function as it's supposed to. And you can see here, and this is just the construction and how it would install into your storefront system. So the frame design allows for servicing damaged panels. If you do have a break-in attempt, one of our best success stories was a T-Mobile store in Chicago that sustained 3 nights of attacks during a civil unrest event, and nobody broke in. Now, those panels looked really bad at the end of those 3 days. You know, they were scuffed up and didn't look very good. So we were able to go out and replace those. And it does install like an OEM storefront. We have clear anodized and bronze anodized options available, as well as custom powder coating and painting. And this is actually one of the partners that we do this for is Ulta. So they take a different approach to their storefront security, which I think is really interesting. So they consider a hybrid approach. They have found that most of the break-in attempts in their stores come through the doors. So what they do is they apply that, they do Riot glass at the doors and the immediate adjacent windows, and then they do that tier 2 everywhere else. But what's really been exciting for them is we are starting to actually replace some of their gates with the S2400. So they're using the S2400 in place of gates in some of their locations. And this is just another example of how Riot glass performs against an attack. And we've installed this all across the country for multiple customers. So it is a great access denial product. So again, we've got Ulta here being stopped with the crowbar attack. And then you'll see here, so this is a sledgehammer attack we had at Murphy Oil. And you'll see here, it counts the number of times that they attempted to get in. And at the end of this, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, where the panels get damaged, but they don't get into the store. Oh, changed his mind. Gonna try again. So you can see there's some damage to the panel, but they did not gain entry into the store. And then we do have tier 5, we have ballistic options available. We don't see this very often in a retail setting. Sometimes we'll get requests for counters at pharmacies or C stores where they're open overnight. And so we'll do it, you know, where the cashier desk is. Most often we aren't seeing this in retail, but there are options available for ballistic glass. What kind of questions do we have?
Well, while we're waiting for other questions, I have a question, Angie.
Sure.
Other than the storefronts, things like cases and so forth that we have in the stores, where we have smash and grabs with those, do you guys manage products for that as well? And what would
Yeah.
you recommend for that type of case that's in the stores, for example?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have with existing cases, right? Everybody's looking at how to protect their existing cases. And some of the challenges around that are the framework, right? Just simply the framework that exists on these cases is very, very minimal. We talked about before the necessity of adhering that film to some kind of framing system so that it will keep that film in place. We're not able to do that in most cases with these types of cases because the framing system is just very minimal. So what we recommend for existing cases is a application of the film. So it will slow them down from getting in, but again, it's a delay product. And then I know that there are other products out there for new cases, people who make specifically like ballistic rated cases, people who make cases meant with polycarbonate so that people can't break in. But where you're trying to solve for your existing cases, the film application will succeed in slowing people down. We're actually just at the beginning of a rollout with a large national retailer going in and covering all of their jewelry cases with the 8mm film.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the product itself and how it's used in the front of the stores. Is there like a consulting part of this where you help your customers choose the best options and present different options for them? How does that go about working here? How do we go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important for us to understand what problem is trying to be solved, right? So we might have a customer come to us and say, hey, we've heard of this product, let's just say the Ultra 800, the 3M Ultra 800, and we want to install this. It's really important for us to start from the beginning and understand the problem that the customer is trying to solve. So what issues are you facing? How often are you facing break-ins? How are they getting through? Where are they getting through? When are they getting through? So we really try to help our customers assess what problem they're trying to solve and then present a solution that will help them to solve that problem. And then what's really great, one of my very favorite things about the loss prevention community is how collaborative it is. I've worked a lot with construction and design, and a lot of that stuff is a little bit more, people gatekeep that information, design and all of that kind of stuff. But I love the loss prevention community because it's very, very collaborative. We're all working towards the same goal. It doesn't benefit anyone to not share information that is working for them. So one of the things that we've also done is we've built up, a community of vendor partners that have different solutions. So if we don't have the solution, if we think there might be something that would be a better fit for you, we have the partners that we can refer you to in those cases as well.
And we have some questions in the Q&A. With that sledgehammer attack, did that inner glass break? It didn't look like it did.
It did. Yeah, it did. And almost every time on a door, you are going to have the inner glass break simply because you don't get that air gap. Anywhere that you have either a center glaze system or a back glaze system, you're going to have a significant air gap. For the doors, it's usually right up against the glass. Now, the great thing is we do have a Gen 2 product for Riot Glass, which is actually a replacement that goes into the door. So that one, you completely pop out the existing glass and you place a replacement unit in there where the safe side is on the exterior of the store.
Okay, for retailers who have tier 4, that would probably be a cost to replace the frame after an averted break-in. Have retailers been able to show a return on investment? Seems like frames would be expensive to replace.
Yeah, so typically the framing is okay. In most cases, we see the framing okay after an attack. Really, the only thing that we're typically replacing is the panel. So we'll be able to go out, pop the old panel out and put the new panel in. And that's a really great question. I haven't heard specifically from a retailer, what the return on investment is whenever you bring in that day two cost scenario. However, we do have retailers that are continuing to use it even after they're replacing on their storefronts, like if they do have an attack. And not every attack requires a replacement, right? If somebody just chucks a cinder block at it and realizes they're not going to through and they get through and they go away, they may opt not to replace that. You may have just a tiny scuff on it. So it's really the more aggressive attacks where we see the need for replacement.
And I will say, whenever we do get those, break-in attempts and they do want to swap out the panel, we do swap out, what you see with the Riot Glass system is a few levels of framing, but that outer frame is a beauty cap, so it doesn't add to the security. We do go ahead and replace those because the way they snap onto the system, once you pull them off to replace the panel, it can bend them a little bit. And so we go ahead and replace those for you just so you are getting a new clean look.
Thanks, Brianna. See, this is why I bring her.
Good decision. We have any more questions? Here comes one. New construction, can those panels be installed without regular windows installed?
Absolutely. And, I think I'll let Brianna talk about this because our Gen 2 is really the best option for new construction to replace what you would normally place in there for your glazing. So Brianna, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have two options that we go to with new construction. With the doors, that door conversion that Angie was talking about, that's going to be our default. So that's going to sit inside the framing system and go right inside the door pocket, no glass in the door. We can do the same thing with a window with that Gen 2 framing system. Oftentimes, what we're finding more in new construction is that what is scoped out as an IGU. So we can do an AP375 IGU, right? So you're going to have glass on the interior and then the AP, a 3/8 inch quarter polycarbonate panel on the exterior with an air gap, right? So instead of your typical IGU that would normally go right in, we would just swap it out. So no framing needed, swap it out for a Riot Glass IGU. And so that's going to give you that same level of protection, but the same exact look with no additional framing. Both are great. It just depends on what you're looking for your storefront. And the IGU, of course, because it's got the glass component, that is at a little bit of a higher price point, but a lot of customers like that aesthetic a little bit more if we're going in on a new construction.
Perfect. Thanks, Brianna.
Anyone else have a question? We good? Okay. Well, I have a question, Angie. How do folks get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me something's going on with my Zoom where I'm not able to share my screen again. I stopped sharing and now it won't let me share again. But wait, can you still see over here? See this screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So here is my contact information. So please feel free to reach out to me directly. As I said, anyone who is interested in receiving some of those samples, I'd be happy to send them to you. So I'm reading and trying to talk at the same time, and it's not really going very well. Did we have another question? Did that question get answered?
Yeah, we're
from Mike Wilson.
Answered.
Okay, all right. Wonderful.
Okay. Well, unless anybody else has anything else that they would like to share, we do want to thank both Angie and Brianna for being with us here today. Of course, we want to thank our sponsor, NGS. And most importantly, we want to thank all of you for attending today. If you have any interest in watching the presentation again, or sharing it with somebody else. The webinar was recorded. You just simply have to go back to the same link that you clicked on in order to watch the webinar today, and you'll be able to view the recording.
All right, thank you so much for having us, Jack, and thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe out there. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.